U.S. says Chinese action in regional waters a threat to stability. More accusations that Occupy Central threatens rule of law here. And using sign language to narrate the World Cup. Good evening. The territorial dispute between China and Japan in the East China Sea took center stage at an international security conference in Singapore today. U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel told the conference America will not look the other way if Beijing ignores international rules and standards. China has dismissed the criticism as groundless. Alan Buckner reports.
Referring to China's recently expanded air defense zone that includes disputed waters, Chuck Hagel said the claims are destabilizing the region.
But we firmly oppose any nation's use of intimidation, coercion, or the threat of force to assert those claims. We also oppose any effort by any nation to restrict overflight or freedom of navigation. The United States will not look the other way when fundamental principles of the international order are being challenged.
Hagel's comments threw some weight behind Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's call last night for China to stop destabilizing actions in support of its territorial claims. At issue in this case is the island chain called the Diaoyus by China and the Senkakus by Japan. While the U.S. declines to take sides on the sovereignty dispute, it has a treaty obligation to support Japan. China was quick to respond. Xu Qiyu, a senior researcher with the People's Liberation Army, said the arguments of international law were being blurred by Abe's argument to advance his own thinly veiled nationalist goals. Japanese Defense Minister Itsunori Onodera later called for dialogue with China on the territorial dispute. Vietnam, meanwhile, chimed in with its own territorial dispute with China. Defense Minister Phung Quang Tan said Hanoi is considering taking legal action against Beijing in accordance with international law after China deployed an oil rig in an area in the South China Sea claimed by Vietnam. The conference in Singapore, known as the Shangri-La Dialogue, has been a forum for defense chiefs and military commanders from Asia and other world powers. Alan Buckner, TVB News.
Locally now, debate is heating up on whether Occupy Central will damage the rule of law here. And top pro-Beijing figure Rita Fan says the civil disobedience movement won't change the central government's stance on political reform. Rani Samtani reports.
Acting Chief Executive Carrie Lam once again made clear Occupy Central is illegal and will harm Hong Kong.
Our understanding of this action is based on what we learned from reports or directly from what the conveners of Occupy Central have said, which is basically to obstruct traffic or pedestrian flow in Hong Kong, or even to paralyze the entire Central in order to force the central authorities or the Hong Kong SL government to accept certain proposals on constitutional development. And from this particular perspective, one could easily conclude that the action is very likely to be illegal.
Lam stressed that the rule of law is one of the city's most important core values. National People's Congress Standing Committee member Rita Fan said Hong Kong enjoys freedom of speech and people have different ways to express their views. But she said Occupy Central is not a good idea, and Fan doesn't believe the movement would change Beijing's stance on constitutional reform. As for comments by the outgoing chairman of the Independent Police Complaints Council, Jatsu Tong, that Occupy Central would not damage the rule of law, Executive Council member Regina Ip said it's difficult to judge if that would indeed be the case. She said it will depend on the actual situation, how many people take part, and how long the occupation lasts. So, Ip said it's premature to say Occupy Central would not damage the rule of law before it actually takes place. She did say social order may be disrupted. Rani Samtani, TVB News.
The LegCo president dismissed concerns today the government is trying to put pressure on the council. This comes after both the chief executive and the chief secretary for administration wrote to Zhang Yuxing expressing concern about lawmakers' disorderly behavior. Earlier this month, unruly behavior by a number of legislators forced the LegCo president to cut short the chief executive's question and answer session. It's been revealed that Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying wrote a letter to the council one day before the Q&A session asking Zhang Yuxing to try to prevent such behavior.
I took it very seriously. I consulted my secretariat, the secretariat of the Legislative Council, and I think we did whatever should be done to make sure that meetings would be conducted properly.
And after the Q&A session was disrupted, Chief Secretary for Administration Carrie Lam sent Zhang a letter of complaint. But the LegCo president said he doesn't believe the government was trying to exert power over the council. Lam said today she has the responsibility to manage the relations between the government and the legislature. She said any official who is insulted or attacked becomes her concern. Lam also revealed she had written a number of letters to the LegCo president about the issue in the past. Stanley Wong of the Housing Authority today dampened hopes that public housing tenants will be granted rent exemptions this year. Vicky Kong reports.
By how much will rents at public housing units be going up? The Housing Authority conducts a review every 2 years in accordance with the income levels of tenants. Speaking to TVB News today, the authority's Subsidized Housing Committee Chairman Stanley Wong believes it's reasonable to expect a maximum 10% hike this year.
We're going to have perhaps a high single-digit increase in the income of in the public housing families, and perhaps I would not rule out that perhaps the increase will be more than 10%.
But under the existing mechanism, any rental increase cannot be more than 10%. In the last 2 rounds of hikes in 2010 and 2012, the Housing Authority granted tenants 1 month of free rent to ease their burden. But Wong pointed out rent exemption is a discretionary measure, and that's unlikely to happen this time round because of the authority's financial situation.
The Housing Authority has basically put out our final budget for this year. Now, according to that particular financial projection, the reserve of the Housing Authority will actually fall from 68 billion Hong Kong dollar to only 28.3 billion Hong Kong dollar by the end of 2017-2018.
Wong added that frequent rent exemptions undermine the rent adjustment mechanism.
Within the mechanism itself, there's a certain relief for the tenants, and that is if wages increase more than 10%, the rental increase has to be only 10% according to the cap.
Instead of offering rent exemptions, Wong said the authority could use its financial resources to renovate public housing estates. Vicky Kong, TVB News.
A major scandal in the United States has left veterans suffering after they were denied timely medical treatment, has led to the resignation of the man in charge. Sonia Artero reports.
Something was desperately wrong with the Department of Veterans Affairs that's supposed to care for those who laid their lives on the line for their country. In April, shocking reports began surfacing that veterans were literally dying while waiting to be seen at a VA medical center in Phoenix, Arizona. An investigation determined that staff were deliberately misreporting waiting times. The problem stems from the department's inability to keep up with the influx of returning Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, in addition to aging Vietnam War vets. Amid a firestorm of outrage, Democrats and Republicans in Congress, as well as some veterans groups, demanded Eric Shinsecki's removal. So it came as no surprise when the man at the top paid for the scandal with his job.
So given the facts I now know, I apologize as the senior leader of the Department of Veterans Affairs. I extend that apology to the people whom I care most deeply about, and that's the veterans of this great country.
But Arizona was just the tip of the iceberg. An audit revealed that 64% of VA facilities across the country were falsifying medical appointment waiting times. House Speaker John Boehner made clear Americans expect more than Shinseki's resignation.
His resignation, though, does not absolve the president of his responsibility to step in and make things right for our veterans.
Barack Obama agreed, saying only the right leader can fix the VA.
I want somebody who's spending every minute of every day figuring out, have we called every single veteran that's waiting? Have they gotten a schedule? Are we fixing the system? What kind of new technology do we need?
For now, Deputy VA Secretary Sloan Gibson will head the department until a permanent replacement is found. Sonia Artero, TVB News.
In sports now, the Miami Heat are through to the NBA Finals once again after storming past the Indiana Pacers overnight. Leading 3-2 in their Eastern Conference Final Series, Miami turned up the heat against the Pacers. LeBron James had another good game for Miami as the Heat won 117-92. A win for reigning world champions Spain as they prepare to defend their title in Brazil next month. England also won last night. More from Tony Sabine.
England were looking to put on a good show for fans in their last match at Wembley before heading off to the World Cup in Brazil. Daniel Sturridge put the home team ahead of Peru in the 32nd minute with a beautiful shot into the top corner of the net. England's other goals came in the second half, with Peru at fault for not defending corner kicks properly. Leighton Baines' set piece was headed home in the 65th minute by Gary Cahill. Then Phil Jagielka found the net 5 minutes later after Peru goalkeeper Raul Fernandez dropped Baines' corner. England next face Honduras and Ecuador in Miami, Florida, before heading to Brazil to play Italy in their World Cup opener. Also winners last night were World Cup holders Spain. Fernando Torres calmly chipped a 51st minute penalty kick down the middle to put his team ahead of Bolivia. Andre Iniesta glided forward to curl a shot past the keeper in the 84th to seal a 2-0 victory. Tony Sabine, TVB News.
Meanwhile, a group of local volunteers have been working on their sign language skills to provide World Cup commentary for the deaf. As Rachel Leung reports, they've even invented new signs to ensure that no detail is left unsaid.
With the World Cup around the corner, local football fans are looking forward to watching the games on TV. And these people have volunteered their services to help the deaf enjoy the matches as well. Using sign language to provide football commentary for the deaf, they are the first group in Hong Kong to provide this kind of service. Simon, one of the sign language narrators, says exaggerated body language and emotions are a must when providing commentary on football matches. AN instructors have come up with new signs for some of the technical terms in football. This sign means diving, which is when a player falls on purpose, hoping that the referee will think an opponent had knocked him down. Kenny, their instructor, is a hardcore football fan, and he hopes that narrating in sign language can allow the deaf to grasp every little detail of a match. He says that some of the information can be left out easily, such as why and which player needs treatment for an injury. Signing football narrators will use jersey colors to represent a country and jersey numbers to point out each player. Rachel Lang, TVB News.
Hong Kong's boxing star Rex Cho retained his WBO Asia Pacific Junior Bantamweight title in Macau tonight. He recovered from 2 knockdowns to beat his Thai opponent in a clear decision by the judges. The win improves his record to 13-0. And it's almost that time of the year again, the annual Chung Un Festival and exciting dragon boat races. As Rachel Leung reports, local and overseas teams have been training hard ahead of the mega event.
Focus. Team 3 cheers for APS. Hip hip. APS. Hip hip. APS. Hip hip. APS. All in. Woo!
Ready, set, and paddle. Ahead of the annual Dragon Boat Championships here in Stanley, many teams headed to the site for a training session. After weeks of rain, the blue skies on this day made training much more appealing. 278 local and overseas teams will be participating in this year's event.
It's very exciting because it's part of the Chinese culture. So we are blending the Chinese with the Western culture. And here in Stanley is a big carnival. And we do like party and do team sports. So it's quite exciting for us to blend the cultures.
I think Dragon Boat is a great example of teamwork.
The festival may be all fun and games, but for some of these teams, the races mean so much more.
It's difficult to get people to be on time and to commit hard for the team because they needed to feel the team spirit. But in the end, it's always party. They always come and we get together and we do the practice and also the races.
Dragon boating is a team sport and you have the team together. It comes to rhythm, it comes to power, stamina. That needs a lot of training. And we start usually mid of February every Saturday.
The yearly spectacle is expected to draw more than 100,000 dragon boat lovers, spectators, and tourists to the shore. It will take place in Stanley on June 2nd.
Apart from all the dragon boat races, there will also be a carnival along the Stanley Main Street featuring crafts and game booths. All paddlers invited to put on their best costumes to compete for the Most Outstanding Outfit Award. Rachel Lang, TVB News.
Here is tonight winning Mark 6 numbers. They are 2, 10, 28, 32, 37, 47, and the extra number is 31. And the weather is staying fine and very hot tomorrow with a top temperature of 33 degrees. And that's the news. Good night.